Hello everyone, Małgorzata Bonikowska, Think Tank, the partner of the conference Masters and Robots. We do believe through this short talks series, we will encourage you to join us 22nd of September. Today, our guest is Oyku Isik. Welcome, Oyku.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oyku is speaking to us from Switzerland. She's actually working at the business school IMD. And she's a digital expert, and she specializes in cybersecurity, cyber ethics, and all things connected with online actually working. The key things she will tell you during the lectures, but maybe Oyku, you could just tell briefly our viewers about yourself.
Yeah, of course, my pleasure. Thank you again. It's great. I look forward to being a part of the conference, first of all. I am a technology management professor here at IMD. My background is in more business intelligence and analytics, but I'm very passionate about, like you said, cybersecurity, data protection, data privacy, and digital ethics. And what I want to do in the conference is to talk about my recent research on cybersecurity and the impact the COVID-19 pandemic had on the domain of cybersecurity and the businesses, how they deal with cybersecurity threats.
Exactly. This is what we are discussing all the time, how much the pandemic influences our everyday life. But what we can see is that everything moved online. This is, of course, not forever, but some of these online activities will remain with us for good. Maybe you can comment on, first of all, on education, how much changed, because you were a professor at university. So how much changed or will change in the domain of education?
Drastically is the word I would say. As an immediate reaction, most universities, business schools alike, our first reaction was to say, okay, how do we take what we do in the classroom face-to-face and put it online? So first trial and errors made it very clear that you cannot do the same thing. So the teaching philosophy, learning mechanisms online work differently than face-to-face. So that actually put a lot of stress and work on the shoulders of professors and teachers alike, because we all needed to redesign our sessions, our content, and think about how do I assess whether the students really learned about it or not. So the impact is in general, the industry of education is huge.
Well, generally, education is, of course, something we could do very openly, but there are also some human activities like politics, like politicians who meet online now, like the chiefs of governments who had to start, taking decisions online also. We know that, in Europe, the EU institutions still partly work online, even the EU summits take place online. So I wonder, how would you comment on the consequences for the security, cyber security also of such meetings? Because I suppose, there are some issues we want to discuss in private and we don't want anyone really to listen to it or interfere.
Absolutely. Technology mediated collaboration, let's put it that way, right? Whether it's teaching or it is meetings, business meetings, has always been an issue because it's just, being social is in our nature, right? Some people really hate it have to do this on Zoom. And Zoom is, of course, just one example of the tools that enable us to collaborate online.
But Zoom is controversial. There was also, some suggestions or even strong decisions in the US or even at the EU institutions level not to use Zoom for, private sessions, for political sessions.
Absolutely. It was such a controversial tool, and there are many reasons that fed to that controversy. First of all, they were really not ready as a startup. They were simply not equipped to handle with such surge in demand for their service. They did some strategic mistakes in positioning themselves as quite a secure platform, even though there were some serious gaps. But what I really liked about their approach is that they were pretty honest about it. They were pretty fast in improving their product. But of course, people were talking about Zoom meetings being hacked, Zoom bombing, people joining into a meeting even though they were not invited, or eavesdropping, listening in, or interrupting the meeting, etc. But when you dissect these examples, you actually see that there's a lot of responsibility or ability on the shoulder of those meeting organizers. Zoom has a lot of security settings that you can manipulate that would, for instance, stop anyone coming in without you as the meeting owner approving them to come in to the meeting room, for instance. So most of those incidents could have been easily prevented if the users had done their homework, so to say.
So as I mentioned, well, we are using Zoom ourselves now, and we are happy with the tool. But I think all the providers of such tools had immediately had to how to say, make the tools even better than they were before, because the number of people who started to use these tools increased incredibly. So that's the first effect. But what about not only tools, but what about also the other consequences for cybersecurity? For example, do you see any more attacks or any more, a situation where somebody really tries to use this situation and at least, listen to what the people say, or even in other forms, radical forms, to interfere in what is happening online?
This has been like a perfect storm, right? It's this increase. You're absolutely right. There has been clearly observed increase in the number of attacks during the period of pandemic. But there was already, I would say, a positive upward trend due to what we now call digital transformation. Most organizations are really heavily invested in digitalizing their processes, their consumer-facing products, services, or even internal processes. So that means our entry points or potential threat surface is increasing. There are so many entry points that a hacker can choose to try and manipulate to either get access into an organization or simply harm the reputation of an organization. So there was already this upward trend, but with pandemic, everybody working from home, everybody is isolated, so there's no IT guy next door that you can turn to ask for help, right? That is something many organized crime groups took immediate advantage of. I clearly remember examples of phishing emails that looks like as if it is coming from the UNICEF or coming from World Health Organization, asking you to download an app that will help you with COVID tracing, for instance. All these phishing emails that are actually not coming from trusted resources. So definitely this is the period of increased attacks that we see, people trying to take advantage of pandemic and isolated people in their homes.
So in a way, this is also a wake-up call for both the industry and the consumers, because the response would be from one side in the industry to make the tools better and fill in all the gaps and work on the way to protect those who use these applications and tools. But from the consumer part of view, it also has to be constant consciousness that this is a reality where we have to really be careful. So what would be, in your view, the longer consequences in the long run of this is what is happening now, which is still not, the final new normal? We are still living under construction between the epochs. What would be the final, the final world in the new normal?
I guess everybody agrees that there's no going back to the way things were, right? Like you said, we will find a new hybrid normal. Every industry will find its optimum point where, there's face-to-face activities, but anything that can be moved to online as effectively will be moved online, and etc. But something you said is very, very true, that end user or consumer awareness is going to be more important than ever. There's a lot of academic research also ongoing, of course, on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, but in general on how the amount of time we spend online affects our behavior. And recent research, for instance, tells us that if we have extended amounts of time spending online, we become more desensitized, we become more vulnerable to threats. So, for instance, an email, a phishing email that we would normally identify as phishing email, we may not be able to identify it if we have been doing online for a very long time, for instance, right? So that's a big question mark. If we are now in front of these screens all day, every day, how does that impact our judgment in terms of the security aspect of these online services, right? So that's there. And I believe there's a lot of training and awareness sessions that organizations need to do. I do believe businesses need to take at least part of the responsibility of creating that awareness with consumers.
So tell us, last question will be about your research, because that's what you you are going to present during the conference. So just tell us a few words about whom did you research?
During the first couple of months of the pandemic, I reached out to chief information security officers. These are the executives in organizations that are head of security initiatives. I talked to about 20-25 of them, and I have to say, all from organizations that are really doing a good job in this, to ask them, what has changed in your organization? What has changed in your day-to-day life in an initiative to understand the impact of COVID-19 on the function of cybersecurity? So I have really interesting thoughts. There were really very clear trends that each of them shared with me, and these were from pharmaceuticals, these are from financial services industries, these were from manufacturing organizations, so quite a wide range of security professionals, but saying the same things. So I think that's really interesting that we can generalize them. And I also did a survey with business executives, also globally, that I asked about their view of, and these were senior business executives that answered a survey that I did that kind of corroborates what I've heard from the chief information security officers. So that's what I want to share with the participants.
Excellent. So let's hear more about it and the detailed results of your lectures, of your research during your lecture at the conference. So please, everyone, join us for Masters in Robots conference. Oyku Isik, thank you so much for your time, and see you soon. See you soon.
See you soon. I look forward to it.